Hey there, beautiful souls, and welcome back to Uncovering Your Inner Power. I'm your host, Jill Ripley, and today we're diving into something I'm really excited about. Recently, I shared an episode called The Wisdom of the Crone, and I noticed something interesting. That episode resonated in a different kind of way. It had more views, more likes, and some thoughtful comments, and it told me something important. There's a part of us as women that recognizes the truth when we hear it. And what became really clear to me is this: the seasons of our lives cultivate who we become. We all have aspects of the divine sacred seasons of a woman within us, and we all have some shadow as well. And I thought it important to shed some light on these so you may be able to see what is working well for you and where you may have some shadow work to do. So I'm creating a series called Sacred Seasons of a Woman, where we will walk through the different phases we move through, not just in age, but emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically. Because each season shapes us. And today we're starting at the beginning. We're starting with the maiden. And typically, this is a phase we begin to move through in our younger years, often in childhood, adolescence, and into early adulthood, when we're first learning who we are in the world. Now, if you're listening to this and thinking, well, I'm long past that stage, I encourage you to stay with me because this isn't just about age. This is about patterns. This is about part of ourselves that may still be operating quietly in the background, influencing how we think, how we love, and how we show up in the world. And I can tell you from my own experience, there are pieces of the maiden that can follow throughout our lives, and it's useful to uncover whether or not we're expressing the divine or the shadow side of the maiden. So let's start with honoring her, because the maiden in her divine expression is actually something really beautiful. She is open, she is curious, she feels deeply. She experiences life with a sense of wonder. There's a softness to her, but also a kind of bravery, because she's willing to feel things for the first time. She's willing to love fully, to trust, to connect, to dream. And there's something incredibly pure about that. It's the part of us that believes in possibility, the part of us that hasn't yet been hardened by disappointment. And that version of ourselves deserves to be honored, not dismissed. But this is where we gently move into the truth, because that openness, that sensitivity, that deep capacity to feel, it also makes the maiden incredibly vulnerable. And when emotional pain enters the picture, whether it's rejection, abandonment, criticism, instability, or feeling unseen, or any other type of trauma, something begins to shift. Not because there's anything wrong with her, but because she's trying to make sense of what she's experiencing. And in that moment, she starts to adapt. I can actually remember a moment when I was really young that speaks to this clearly. I grew up in the city and I had a group of friends who were a lot tougher than I was. And I remember them telling me I was a wimp because I didn't like to fight. That just wasn't who I was. But they were convinced that if I didn't learn, I was going to get hurt, that I wouldn't be able to protect myself. So they literally took turns fighting with me, trying to teach me how. And I remember something shifting in me during that time, because it wasn't just about learning how to fight. It was about this subtle message that who I naturally was wasn't enough to survive in the world I was in. So I adapted. I started to put on a tougher exterior. I became the tough girl, the city girl. And what's interesting is I carried that version of myself with me for a long time. And if I'm being honest, I can still feel pieces of that in me today. Not in the same way, but in certain moments, I can still feel that instinct to protect, to harden, and to not fully soften. And looking back now, I can see that wasn't me becoming more of myself. That was me learning to protect myself by becoming someone I thought I needed to be. And this is exactly how the shadow side of the maiden begins to form. not because something is wrong with us, but at some point we learned that being who we naturally are didn't feel safe or didn't feel like enough. And from that place, we start to look outside ourselves for cues on who to be. The maiden can begin to look outside of herself to figure out who she is. She starts to notice what gets approval, what gets attention, what gets love. And even without realizing it, she begins to shape herself around that. She becomes who she thinks she needs to be in order to be chosen. This is where we start to see the shadow side of the maiden. And this is where I think a lot of women are going to feel this. Because what often looks like insecurity or people pleasing or fear of rejection is actually a response to emotional experiences that taught us it wasn't safe to just be who we are. The shadow maiden seeks validation externally, people pleases, avoids conflict, fears rejection deeply, confuses attention with love. She shrinks herself to be accepted and abandons her own needs to maintain connection. And again, this isn't something we consciously choose. This is something we learn. And more often than not, it's something we learn because at some point, being our full, authentic self didn't feel safe or didn't feel like enough. This is the season where so much of our internal programming begins through family dynamics, through what we observe in relationships, and through what we're praised for and what we're criticized for. Through social media, through school, through early experiences, we start to internalize messages like, I'm lovable when, I'm accepted if, I need to be this way in order to belong. And those beliefs can run deep. And when I look back at my own life, I can see this clearly. Times where I shaped myself to fit. Times where I stayed quiet when I should have spoken up. Times where I confused being wanted with being valued. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. And here's something really important to understand. The maiden doesn't just disappear. If those patterns aren't recognized, if they're not healed, she comes with us into our relationships, into our decisions, into the way we speak to ourselves. So this isn't about looking back and judging who you were. This is about becoming aware of what might still be active within you and how you can shape your beliefs about yourself intentionally. So I want to gently invite you to reflect on this. Where in your life do you still seek validation? Where do you find yourself shrinking just to be accepted? Where are you still waiting to be chosen instead of choosing yourself? And just notice. No judgment, just awareness. Because here's the empowering part. Once you can see it, you can begin to shift it. You can begin to reconnect with the divine aspects of the maiden. The openness, the curiosity, the ability to feel deeply without abandoning yourself in the process. In the next episode, we're going to move into the next season where you may start to recognize how these early adaptations begin to show up in a deeper, more complex way. Because each phase builds on the one before it, shaping not just who we were, but who we're becoming. So if this resonated with you, if you saw yourself in any part of this, just know you're not alone and you're not behind. You're exactly where you need to be. And I invite you to come back for the next episode as we continue this journey of uncovering your inner power. And if you found yourself seeing parts of your own story in this episode, I'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment, share this episode with someone who might need it, or reach out to me directly. And if you're not already following the podcast, make sure you do so you don't miss the rest of this series. Because this isn't just about understanding these seasons. It's about uncovering your inner power within each of them. And I'm really honored to be walking through this with you. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. I truly honor you for being here and for choosing to do this deeper work. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to stay connected. You can sign up for my newsletter at empoweredbythestorm.com/newsletter. And when you do, you'll receive a free copy of my How to Love Yourself workbook as a thank you. My book, Empowered by the Storm, is also available on Amazon if you'd like to go deeper into this work on your own time. And if you're feeling called to more personal support, you can visit my website to explore private coaching and see if it feels like the right next step for you. Until next time, be gentle with yourself, trust your journey, and remember, your healing matters.